It's 7 p.m. Tuesday, July 2nd here in Seoul, and these are tonight's top headlines. South Korean President Moon Jae-in says this past weekend's historic encounters at the DMZ practically marked the end of hostile relations with North Korea and the start of a new era of peace. As tensions flare between South Korea and Japan, the US urges both sides to work together in resolving security issues in the region. Meanwhile, Tokyo's decision to toughen restrictions on chip exports to South Korea apparently didn't come as recently as initially thought. And the UN Security Council decides to release 2 ships being held in South Korea that are suspected of violating UN sanctions on North Korea. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Arirang. Our top story this evening, President Moon Jae-in says the DMZ meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un this past weekend symbolized an end to hostile relations between North Korea and the US. He added that more imagination is needed to help facilitate future dialogue. Our Shin Se-min starts us off.
President Moon Jae-in called the recent North Korea-US meeting at the Korean border as an end to hostile relations between the former adversaries. Speaking during a cabinet meeting Tuesday, President Moon said the impromptu meeting at the DMZ signifies the start of a full-fledged era of peace and was only made possible due to a fresh diplomatic approach.
북미 간에도 문서상의 서명은 아니지만 사실상의 행동으로 적대 관계의 종식과 새로운 평화 시대의 본격적인 시작을 선언했다고 말할 수 있을 것입니다.
The president pointed at how there was no extra security detail at the very moment when the U.S. leader was stepping onto North Korean soil for the first time since the armistice was signed 66 years ago, implying a solid level of trust between the two leaders. He added that if the two parties kept that moment in mind in the future negotiations, it could lead to tangible results. Moon said progress was made possible thanks to the personal rapport between the leaders, as well as the reduced border tensions, including the disarming of the joint security area in Panmunjom following a military accord between the two Koreas. Moon also said that in his conversation with the U.S. counterpart, he emphasized the positive effects of the economy and security through the joint inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex, to which Trump expressed support and urgency to establish peace. President Moon, who had lobbied hard for that nuclear diplomacy between the North and the U.S., also gave credit to their respective parties.
세계를 감동시킨 북미 정상 간의 판문점 회동은 트럼프 대통령의 SNS를 통한 파격적인 제안과 김정은 위원장의 과감한 호응으로 이루어졌습니다. 그 파격적인 제안과 과감한 호응은 상식을 뛰어넘는 놀라운 상상력의 산물입니다.
In order to achieve the historical task of complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, President Moon says a constant flow of imagination and thinking outside the box is necessary, perhaps indicating a more unconventional nuclear diplomacy down the line. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Trump has been praising news coverage of Sunday's meeting with Kim Jong-un, steering away from his usual criticism of the media. Kim Yo-sun reports.
President Trump took to Twitter on Monday to say he had a great meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Trump also said he hoped to meet with Kim again in the near future. In a separate tweet, he also expressed his satisfaction over the media coverage of his short meeting Sunday with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at the DMZ. Thanking South Korean President Moon Jae-in, Trump explained that it was a great call by Kim to have the very well-covered meeting. He added that good things can happen for all. This is a starkly different response from President Trump, who usually lambasts mainstream media outlets for their fake news about him and his administration. Not known for being friendly toward Trump, CNN analyzed that the surprise DMZ meeting was a political victory for President Trump, who has his eyes focused on winning the 2020 election. The article said the DMZ encounter could be a centerpiece of the Peace and Prosperity platform, which he hopes will win the hearts of American voters. It also says the North Korean leader may visit Washington next year. CNN pointed out Kim would want to strike a deal if he fears President Trump might lose in 2020, as he acknowledges that other U.S. presidents would not treat him the same way Trump does. So many predict the working-level nuclear talks that will resume between Pyongyang and Washington in the coming weeks could lead to a first-ever visit to Washington by a North Korean leader. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, on Sunday, for those of you who remembered, we provided you with live coverage of the historic rendezvous between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump at Panmunjom. And yesterday, North Korea's state-run Korean Central Television aired a 16-minute documentary on the meeting showing some previously unseen footage. For more highlights, we have our Unification Ministry correspondent, Junghee, here in the studio with us. Junghee, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Right, let's get to it. So how did the North Korean documentary portray this surprise handshake meeting? Did Pyongyang think it was as important as many of us did here?
Definitely, Aram. And what we have to note is that North Korea's Korean Central Television emphasized the fact that the meeting took place after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un accepted a personal offer from U.S. President Donald Trump, highlighting the intimate relationship the two leaders share. But in addition to that, Aram, I have a few scenes to show you straight from the documentary. So let's take a look.
All eyes and ears around the globe were once again fixed on the Korean peninsula. Anticipation over a North Korea-US summit is heating up the globe with excitement.
So we can see that the North Korean TV actually inserted parts of clips of coverage by the BBC, NHK, and Al Jazeera to highlight the international attention and to add drama and to portray this as an even more significant international event. Adam.
That's quite interesting seeing clips from foreign media, especially from North Korea. Now, tell us about the North Korean figures that were present in the video. It seems Kim Jong-un brought along with him some of the highest levels officials in his regime.
That's right. From the moment when North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was walking out of the Panmun Pavilion, which is located in the North Korean side of Panmunjom, we can see that a number of top aides were accompanying Kim Jong-un. So they are the North's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho and First Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee, both Pyongyang's top nuclear negotiators. We also see Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong, whom South Korea's intelligence says recently rose into leadership, and Hyun Song-wol, a well-known musician as well as a trusted politician, now in charge of protocol. Now, here's a figure we have to pay attention to. This is Jang Kim-chol, the new head of the North Korean ruling party's United Front Department. Remember how Kim Young-chol, the former top nuclear envoy, used to head this division. But in this video, Kim Young-chol is nowhere to be seen, and his successor, Jang Kim-chol, was seen in public for the very first time.
That is interesting because there has been a reported reshuffle in the regime.
That's
so
right.
I think a lot of attention was paid attention to who was present with Kim Jong-un at the time. Now, looking at that documentary, were there any scenes in particular that stood out for you?
Well, Adam, what I noticed was that U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and North Korea's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho were actually shaking hands after the meeting between Kim and Trump wrapped up. So in addition to that, I actually have this part of the documentary clip to show you and our viewers. Let's take a look.
Kim Jong-un greeted the American entourage, including White House advisor Ivanka Trump, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, and U.S. Ambassador to South Korea, Harry Harris.
And this clip is not from the documentary, but from other footages. U.S. officials are chatting with North Korean senior officials. Began was spotted talking to Kwon Jong-un in the Freedom House. Kwon is a senior North Korean diplomat who recently denounced South Korea and the U.S. Choi Sun-hee and Allison Hooker were also standing on the other side, chatting.
Right, Junghee, so this was the third face-to-face meeting between Kim Jong-un and Trump after much of will they or won't they. Were there any hints of a possible future summit or another summit between the two?
Well, what we know so far is that Kim Jong-un and Trump actually promised to have another summit, though we don't know when or where that's going to take place. But I think it's noteworthy how Kim Jong-un and Trump invited each other to their respective countries. This is what Trump said at Panmunjom while standing right next to Kim Jong-un. Take a listen.
Thank you, everybody.
Will you invite him to visit the U.S. anytime
I
soon?
would invite him right now.
Is that possible?
To the White House, absolutely.
And take a listen to what Kim Jong-un's translator had to say afterwards.
Guys.
When the time is right and President Trump has a chance to visit Pyongyang, it will leave a great mark in the political history of the world.
So I guess it'll be quite interesting to see if and where the next Kim-Trump summit will take place. Whether it be in Washington or in Pyongyang, I think we'll have to see, or it could be elsewhere, who knows. Okay, that's all the time I'm afraid we have for you today, Junghee. Thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Now, while efforts are being made to resume talks with the North, South Korea is also working hard to enforce UN sanctions on the regime. Seoul has been holding 6 vessels captive in its ports for breaking those sanctions, although 2 of them have now been released. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Lee Ji-won tells us more.
UN Security Council Sanctions Committee on North Korea decided Monday to release 2 of the vessels being held in South Korean ports for illegally conducting ship-to-ship transfers of petroleum products bound for North Korea.
Our ministry submitted a proposal to the committee regarding what to do with the 2 vessels along with the results of their investigation. With the Council's approval, the 2 vessels can now set sail.
There are 6 vessels held in South Korea for ship-to-ship trading with the North, which violates UN Security Council resolutions. 2 are still under investigation, but of the 4 whose investigations are finished, the Hong Kong flag Lighthouse Winmore and the South Korean P Pioneer have been set free upon Seoul's proposal to the UN in late May. Though they were found to have broken the law, an official at the Foreign Ministry said South Korea and the committee saw that they had not intended to, and the ship's operators promised it'll never happen again. Specifically, the Lighthouse Winmore will not again engage in ship-to-ship transfers, and the P Pioneer will have its tracking system turned on at all times and submit its course logs at the government's request. It said they took these measures because the cost of holding them, borne by the ship's operators, got too high. The Lighthouse Winmore had been held since late 2017 and the P Pioneer since last September. Meanwhile, the committee is reviewing whether to demolish the 2 other ships held by South Korea, the Koti and the Talent Ace. Investigations showed that their violations were deliberate. South Korea's foreign ministry said this is the first time the full sanctions process has been completed, from the seizure of ships to an investigation and then follow-up measures. The ministry added that it thinks this case will set a good example for other member states and also further encourage them to faithfully implement the UN resolutions. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
The South Korean government says it's working closely with the World Food Programme to ship 50,000 tons of rice to North Korea as food assistance. If everything goes smoothly, the first shipment could take place sometime this month. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The Ministry of Unification said it plans to sign a written contract with the World Food Programme either on Tuesday or Wednesday to send rice to North Korea. An official from the ministry told reporters Tuesday that the WFP, which it says is in talks with North Korea, will be in charge of the entire process, from transportation and distribution once the rice is loaded onto ships. Regarding an exemption to the sanctions on the North, the ministry said rice itself is not subject to sanctions, but that using ships to transport it could be, implying that the delivery will be made by sea. Once the administrative work is done, 50,000 tons of South Korean rice packed in 1.25 million burlap bags containing 40 kilograms of rice each will be labeled Republic of Korea in English and Korean. The ministry officials said the plan is to send the first shipment sometime this month, and considering that a vessel can generally carry 5,000 to 6,000 tons at one time, it may take up to 10 rounds to send it all. The officials said the WFP is planning to set up regional offices for the distribution and monitoring of the rice, while increasing the number of monitoring agents from the current 50 or so to nearly double that number. Meanwhile, the ministry said it's considering the proposal by the World Health Organization to participate in projects related to providing medical support in North Korea, particularly regarding health for pregnant women and for curing malaria and tuberculosis. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Japanese government announced yesterday it would slap export restrictions on Korea on parts needed to make semiconductors and computer displays. However, reports show that the decision goes much further back, and it was made back in May amid its diplomatic row with Seoul. Kim Hye-sung with the details.
The Japanese government reportedly decided to impose its export restrictions on chip supplies to Korea back in May. The Yomiuri Shimbun said Tuesday that Tokyo considered the chip export restrictions along with other measures like stricter visa conditions for South Koreans in response to the South Korean Supreme Court's ruling last year ordering Japanese companies to compensate Korean victims for war-time forced labor during Japan's colonial rule. The export restrictions set to go into effect this Thursday affect fluorinated polyamides, photoresists, and etching gas, which are used to produce semiconductors and displays. It means Japanese exporters will have to apply for license for each batch they wish to export to South Korea, a process that could take 90 days. Japan controls 70 to 90% of global production of these three materials, and export restrictions could affect Korean firms like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix that are already struggling with falling chip exports. South Korea's trade ministry criticized the move Monday as economic retaliation and said it will look into filing a lawsuit at the World Trade Organization.
Chemical materials like resins are hard to store. The inventories Korean firms have are estimated to be around 1 to 2 months' supply. Japan's export restriction could affect their production of chips due to a delay in shipments or a total ban. There's a reliance on Japanese exports that can't be diversified immediately.
But the move is also likely to hurt Japanese firms given the interconnected global value chain. The Nihon Keizai Shimbun said Japan's export restrictions would also affect Japanese firms that have Korean companies as key customers, and that a production snag for companies like Samsung Electronics could disrupt production of all electronics goods, including smartphones and TVs that need semiconductors. The Korea International Trade Association also released a report saying Japan exported 12%, 86%, 23% of resist, etching gas, and fluorinated polyamides to South Korea between January and April, and that a protracted export restriction will hurt Japanese firms. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Now, in response to the escalating feud between the Asian countries, the U.S. State Department says it sees ensuring close ties among the United States, South Korea and Japan as vital in resolving shared regional challenges, including those posed by North Korea. A spokesperson for the department was responding to a written inquiry by Seoul-based Yonhap news agency. Despite the tensions, the State Department said the three countries are united in pressuring North Korea to denuclearize. It said the U.S. is always pursuing ways to strengthen the three countries' relations, both publicly and behind the scenes. Shifting gears now, and Korea's employment figures have been pretty weak over the past couple of years, but a new report from the Trade Ministry suggests there's hope for job seekers in the so-called new industries like AI. Businesses say they're going to need a lot more people in the years to come. Our Ko Ryun-hee explains.
Korea's Trade Ministry has announced that a total of 165,000 employees are needed by 2027 in the 5 promising new industries, which are considered to be the driving force for the local economy. This will be a 56,000 increase from the number of employees in these industries as of the end of 2017. The announcement is based on a survey done last year of almost 2,000 businesses involved in the industries, including next-generation semiconductors and displays, IoT home appliances, AR and VR, and high-tech material. The survey mainly asked businesses about the number of employees and manpower shortages. The ministry says the number of employees is expected to increase the most in the next-generation semiconductor sector, defined as chips with artificial intelligence technology. As of the end of 2017, the number of employees was around 27,000, and by 2027, the number is likely to increase to around 44,000. The increase of around 16,000 people is the largest among the 5 sectors. The report added that the most jobs will likely be created in the chip manufacturing technology field. The ministry also highlighted the AR and VR sector. During the same period, the number of employees in this sector is likely to increase to around 9,000 from less than 5,000, with an average annual job growth rate of 6.5%. The Trade Ministry aims to work with related ministries such as Education and Labor, so that companies can easily find suitable workers. 고르니, Arirang News.
The United States is threatening new tariffs on the European Union on $4 billion worth of goods over Europe's subsidies for Airbus. The list of goods released by the US Trade Representative on Monday includes 89 additional subcategories, including European foods and liquor, on top of products worth $21 billion that was announced back in April. The dispute over subsidies given to Boeing in the US and Airbus in Europe goes back nearly 15 years. USTR said it will hold a hearing on the proposed tariffs on August 5th. 2 years have passed since President Moon Jae-in first unveiled his so-called Moon Jae-in Care, aimed at expanding health insurance coverage. Major steps have been made in that direction, but the president says he will do more, including an expansion of coverage to 70% of all medical treatments. Park Ki-jun gives the details.
President Moon Jae-in has vowed to make sure that his so-called Moon Jae-in Care guarantees coverage for 70% of all treatments within his term. At an event Tuesday at a hospital in Goyang assessing the progress made during the first 2 years of the plan, President Moon appeared confident that his healthcare plan will succeed. The Moon administration's healthcare plan, announced in 2017, aims to cover all medical costs except for cosmetic surgery, and it has made some major accomplishments on that front. Data released the same day by the Ministry of Health and Welfare show that 36 million people saw their medical costs cut down by around $1.9 billion in the past 2 years thanks to the new policy. Patients who require intensive care used to pay half the cost out of pocket, but now they pay just a fourth. Medical costs for the elderly and children fell by $686 million. But President Moon says his government will not stop there. He has promised to lower costs for patients getting checkups and treatments that had not been covered by state insurance before. They include prostate exams and abdominal and breast MRIs. The president added that he will work to enhance the quality of emergency and critical care, areas that are directly linked to people's lives. More children's hospitals will be built as well. The South Korean president said he will continue to strengthen welfare benefits as part of building what he calls an inclusive nation. Park Ki-jun, Arirang News.
The newly appointed Commissioner of the National Tax Service, Kim Hyun-jun, has been sworn into office. President Moon delivered a certificate of appointment to him earlier today at the Blue House. Kim began his term last Friday, a day after the president signed off on it. His nomination was also approved by Parliament, which said he is qualified for the post. The 51-year-old is the youngest person to lead the tax agency since the end of military rule. From next Wednesday, foreign visitors to South Korea will be able to get through immigration faster when leaving the country by using an automated kiosk. The Justice Ministry said the service will be available for short-term visitors above the age of 16 who registered their face and fingerprints upon arrival. The service will be available at airports in Incheon, Gimhae, Gimpo, Jeju, Daegu, as well as the port of Busan. The ministry says this will make the process more convenient and reduce congestion at immigration desks. Seoul is set to host one of the world's most high-adrenaline motor races, but it's more than just about fast cars and smooth driving, as the event will also give us a glimpse into an eco-friendly future in mobility. Our Won Jung-hwan has this report.
We made it. We are here in Seoul, and this is a great moment for the ABB Formula E Championship.
An electric-powered auto racing series, the 6th season of the ABB Formula E World Championship, will be held in Seoul. Different from the more widely known Formula One, Formula E showcases the newest and greenest in next-generation automobile technology. It's a racing tournament featuring all-electric vehicles, promoting fast but also eco-friendly vehicles. Since making its global debut in Beijing in 2014, Formula E has become a top-tier motorsporting event that highlights the importance of tackling environment issues.
23% of the fine dust emissions come from the transport sector. For example, in Beijing, it accounts for some 45%. So the shift towards electric cars is a global trend. If we don't follow the trend, we will be left out.
Indeed, electric street racing is also aimed at promoting all-electric vehicles as a driver of the country's future economic growth. The founder of Formula E also says it is a great opportunity for Korea to take the global lead in battery technology. The country is vying for a bigger share of the car battery market, already accounting for 80% of the global market share combined with Japan and China.
And Korea, it's I think in the pole position, like we like to say in racing, in terms of battery technology. So there's a great opportunity for this country to really lead this electric revolution all around the world.
Aside from the windfalls of hosting the event, there were also some concerns that a racing event held in the capital could create friction with its residents.
Always you have someone that complains because it's in an urban area. What we try to do is to have a dialogue, a conversation with the residents of the place. We try to involve them with a lot of time in advance in the process, and normally the complaints are resolved.
The Formula E season will kick off in November, and following 14 races in 12 cities, it will arrive at Jamsil Stadium and on neighboring streets in Seoul on May 3rd. Observers will be able to feast their eyes on eco-friendly supercars, zooming past them at 280 kilometers per hour. 원정환, Arirang News.
People are now using social media not only to express themselves, but to also connect with others living in different parts of the world. Global content creators have gathered here in Korea to discuss ways to bridge the world through the sharing of culture. Our Kan Young-woo has more.
South Korea is trying to figure out how the country can connect itself with the rest of the world through culture. The Korea Image Communication Institute held its 10th annual Culture Communication Forum in Seoul on Tuesday, with a dozen prominent figures from 11 countries taking part in the event. Focusing on Korean culture, the panel discussed how both traditional and modern content can be shared and disseminated out to the world.
I thought tradition should be interpreted and expressed as something trendy. One of the ways to do so is to collaborate with others. Thus, I've combined Korean traditional music kugak with modern jazz and rock, trying to find an answer.
Yeah, it's not just like I just talk about my culture, but it has to be vice versa. You also have to listen. You also have to be open-minded about all the cultures.
Talking about the internet content market and current trends, the participants also discussed why Korean culture, K-pop in particular, is gaining a lot of popularity from all over the world.
Everyone knows that within the first 24 hours after an album comes out, the live performance will be there. You'll get to see the choreography. You'll get to see them on a music program. More contents will come out that whole week. It's really an exciting time and really fun to watch K-pop, and because it's just so dynamic and so fast in that way.
Before the forum, the participants had a chance to get a hands-on, authentic take of Korean culture on Monday. They visited a number of locations, including the Korea Furniture Museum, home to some 2,500 traditional furniture and 10 traditional Korean-style houses called hanok, getting a glimpse of the nation's rich history. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
This year's monsoon has been relatively quiet, especially for the capital. Let's get more from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, what's the latest?
Well, depending on the regions, this year's monsoon arrived a day to a week later than average. And up until now, the monsoon has mostly affected the southernmost parts of the country because of a cold front keeping from easily moving up north. And because of those cold air pockets, the rainy season is expected to enter a long pause this week as the monsoon front is pushing down towards the south. And as the rain clouds disappear, it'll get hotter in the northern parts of the peninsula, so keep an eye on the heat wave alerts tomorrow. And Beijing is also expecting a very hot weather, while Tokyo will be cooler under rainy skies. And morning lows for tomorrow will be similar to today, with Seoul waking up to 20 degrees Celsius. There's possibility of Jeju being influenced by the monsoon in the morning hours, though. And there will be a few clouds drifting in the afternoon, but it will mainly be sunny, with Seoul topping out to 31 degrees, while Chuncheon and Daegu goes higher up to 33 degrees. The heat will peak in the later half of this week on the warm easterly wind, and also the monsoon front will move up again and drench the southern areas over this weekend. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you as always for watching. News in Depth is coming up next.